First, they had Taylor's version. Then we showed you Brandon's version. Now it's time for Dave's version of 5 Twins acquisitions worth pounding the table for. Next on Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Locked On Twins, your daily go-to destination for the top Minnesota Twins insight, discourse, and analysis. Personally, it's my favorite show of the Locked On Podcast Network, which, by the way, brings you your team every day. I'm co-host Dave Brown, a professional ball writer since 1998, a BBWAA member since 2012, a Baseball Hall of Famer for the second time this year. Please follow me on Twitter at @AnswerDaveBrown if you like. You can also find me on BlueSky at @AnswerDave. So hooray for that. Across cyberspace is Brandon Warren, a Twins watcher for 30 years who not long ago covered the team on a daily basis professionally. He asks that you elevate the discourse with him on Twitter at Brandon_Warren, and you can also talk to him on BlueSky at JustWarren and some of the file extensions. I don't want to confuse you, though. Here's what's coming up on this podcast. We have moved on from that roster business, the Phil Miller. Yeah, we're not doing that anymore. Now we're doing 5 Twins acquisitions that you'd pound the table for. Recently, you probably saw Brandon's 5 guys. I like Brandon's 5 guys. That's not Brandon's hamburger stand. I'm talking about his 5 players that he wants the Twins to acquire. I've got 5 too. And we're going to talk about those 5 players. We had several. We made sure to come up with different names, but we do have some themes in common. Brandon's list and mine. I'm going to do a reverse and start at the beginning rather than the end like him. They need a first baseman, the Minnesota Twins.
Should we tell people, though, that they can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Sorry to slow your roll, Mr. Dave.
I was not ready for that. I thought we had an understanding about did we have one of those on this episode, but I guess
no. It's on the last segment. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, do that stuff. What he said.
Mia Ron Culpa.
So now that we've got our ducks in a row as far as that goes, the Twins need a first baseman. Is that what it says? First base lockdown. And I think there are 2 options. I don't think either of them are on the roster. One of them was on the roster last year. But if the Twins aren't bringing back Carlos Santana, then they need to go after Paul Goldschmidt. He is a guy who last year he had the worst season of his career. He was not even a major league average hitter. He was a big reason why the Cardinals continue to disappoint. And he has shown the last couple of years some wear and tear on a 36, 37-year-old career. Paul Goldschmidt, though, before last year, was on a track that was Hall of Fame worthy. If he has a couple of more decent seasons, he's going to have as much baseball reference war, as someone like Eddie Murray. Somebody like that. He's not going to be a top-end first baseman in the Hall of Fame, but he will be well above average, or pretty above average, typical Hall of Fame type first baseman. I still think he's got something left. He's he's a guy who can still play first base. I think toward the end of last season, he did get going a little bit. It was too late for the Cardinals, but in September, October, hit 275, slug 473. August, hit 272, slug 478. July, 260, slugged 470. So kind of low on base percentage when compared to like Carlos Santana, but still a guy who could hit some doubles, hit some home runs, play a good first base. I think he would be a great bounce back candidate for the Twins going into next year. Are you're on the you're on the Goldschmidt bandwagon, are you not, sir?
Yeah, the biggest issue I have is if his price will be reflective of the season he had last year, if it's still going to be inflated. Now, it's going to come down to what does Christian Walker get? I'm sure that's part of the conversation as well. Or I don't know who will drive the other's market. I suspect Walker, the more recent Diamondback, will drive whatever Goldschmidt gets, but maybe neither. Maybe it's unrelated because it's going to be a multi-year deal versus a one-year deal. But with that said, like if I could get Goldschmidt for a contract commensurate with his play last year, maybe plus a little bit given back to the year before that and the year before that. So I'm looking at like 1 year, 14 or 15. I don't know if that's in the stratosphere of what he'd consider, but I would definitely be on board with that because if he doesn't play well, you can keep him and put him on the bench, hit lefties, or you could just outright cut him. And you still have some pretty decent depth behind him. Not great in Jose Miranda. And, maybe if you want to see if Matt Wallner or somebody wants to play first base as well, you got some options there.
Yeah, the Twins have some options. I don't really like a lot of them, but they could bring back. I think it might actually end up coming back to Carlos Santana. Really, I think it's a matter of will they be willing to. He would deserve a raise based on what he did last year, winning a Gold Glove, being an important player, hitting well. I would say you're going to need at least 10 to get him on a 1-year deal. And I think a $15 or possibly $20 million deal would get Goldschmidt, maybe with some incentives. The qualifying offers $21 million. I think last year he made 26. Yes. I would expect him to understand that a pay cut is coming in a short deal. It's possible the Astros might get a wild hair and give him a 3-year deal. They just got over the Jose Abreu situation though, so I don't know if that is something they're going to be interested in. But that's a team probably the Twins would have to compete for Goldschmidt's services. I like him just because I think there's a possibility too that he could bounce back big. It's a gut feeling a little bit. It's a little bit looking at his stats late in the season, which are not certainly great, but maybe reflective of a guy who's realizing that I don't know if he needs to work a little bit harder when he gets 37 years old or just, work harder mentally to come out of those slumps when things aren't going well. Because Nolan Arenado, who's a little bit younger, didn't have a great season either for the Cardinals. It was weird how both those guys kind of and I'm not saying that they're the only reasons the Cardinals weren't good, but I think everybody sort of let everybody else down on the Cardinals. It just wasn't a good environment.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and that's why they're looking to retool the way they are. I think you got to not necessarily start over. They've got Jordan Walker and a couple other guys, but yeah, they're going to have to do something differently. And I think that moving on from their corner infield might be one of the big steps to that.
But I don't necessarily think that means that a team like the Twins should avoid somebody like Goldschmidt. I could see a Nelson Cruz-ish kind of an impact with bringing him in.
Yeah, I was going to say 2019 Nelson Cruz comes to mind.
So I like that idea. If that doesn't work, he is from Houston, he grew up in the suburbs, one of those suburbs of Houston that sounds like a subdivision, like the New Braunfels or the Cataracts. I don't know what it is, but it's one of those town names.
Is it the Woodlands?
And so I kind of half expect the Astros to get him, but then again, maybe they're not going to be interested in doing that after struggling with Jose Abreu in recent seasons. So maybe the Twins will have a chance there. But and if not him, Santana. You know what you're getting. He says he wants to play another 3 or 4 years. That's encouraging to me. But I also think he'll probably he might take a 1-year deal or maybe a 2-year deal, maybe a 1 and an option, maybe a mutual option, maybe 1 and a mutual option. I think that we've just negotiated. I think Carlos Santana's coming back to the Twins. Everybody, I've done it.
Nice
so, would you be okay with Santana if you were?
Yeah, I think that would be fine too. I don't I don't have any problem with that. He handled the strike zone well, doesn't strike out, has enough power when you need it. And he keeps the line moving, whether you hit him at the top of the order or 6th, 7th. He fits very well on this team.
Takes a good picture with a Pepsi machine. So there's lots of little intangibles that Carlos Santana brings. All right, now that we've done the first baseman, is it a good time to break? Is it?
Yeah, let's do that, and then we'll come back and ride this thing out.
Let's ride it.
We'll do exactly that. For some reason, these keys are not doing what they're supposed to, but get ready to tackle.
Neither is your tongue.
What's that?
It sounds like you have something on your tongue that making your tongue not do what it's supposed to.
No, it's all good. Well, you can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now they're doing this thing where new customers can bet $5, and if that bet hits, you get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed. I mean, it's basically free play. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So if you're got a wild hair in the middle of the game or a hunch, you can go to that app or on your computer to FanDuel.com. Check out the latest stats, live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. That's FanDuel.com. Check that out today to get started. They'll start you with $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet hits. Again, that's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Brandon, do you remember last offseason when we were wondering, well, who could the Twins bring in to supplement the roster? And if you need a right-handed hitting outfielder, who could you bring in? I remember a bunch of different names. One of them was Randall Grichuk, who ended up going to the Diamondbacks and was had like his best season ever. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a platoon or sort of they used him in situations to his advantage.
Very Rocco.
Right-handed pitchers that he would struggle against. Torey Lovullo didn't use him. It probably would drive Twins fans crazy because he only had 279 plate appearances, but he had 291, 348, 528 slugging percentage, 40% better than league average if you go by OPS plus. And he played okay in the outfield. He would play when Jock Peterson wouldn't play, basically. And they mixed and matched a little bit. He was a positive player on defense. I think better in non-right field situations, but you could put him occasionally in center or certainly in left. That would be a guy I could see the Twins pairing him with Wallner in right field. And like I said in a recent show, I kind of want the Twins to play Wallner against lefties. Mm-hmm. But if you didn't, this would be a guy that you could put out there and maybe put him in left field some other times and maybe spell Buxton. I think it makes a lot of sense. Boy, I'm kind of getting excited right now. Grichuk doesn't always produce above league average. He's got maybe 4 seasons out of 11. 4 seasons out of 11 where it didn't, the Angels sometimes, you play weird. You go to Canada, you don't hit over, league average. But for the most part, he's a little bit above average. I think he'd be a good guy.
No, I think you're onto something too. And if you get comfortable with Wallner facing lefties, you just slide him over to the other side and platoon with Larnach, who maybe you're mixing and matching with Willie Castro or, heaven forbid, like a Michael Hellman. We've talked about that. And just having someone else there to kind of spell against a left on left and, take a plate appearance late in a game if you're facing, who's a good lefty closer now? AJ Puck. If AJ Puck comes into the game late and you're needing to get a right-handed bat, that's another way to go. And yeah, he'd be going from a manager who managed a lot like Rocco, Torey Lovullo, to Rocco if that was the case. So yeah, I have no issue with it. I don't know much about him in the clubhouse. I thought I had heard once that he was maybe a bit of a, Yasmani Grandal, but not like bad or anything. But at the end of the day, I mean, a 1-year deal, he signed a very reasonable deal this last offseason. So he's probably going to be looking to get a little bit of that value back. But, he could do a reasonable Teoscar Hernandez impersonation if things break right.
That's a funny you should mention Teoscar Hernandez. I've got Grichuk maybe at 2 years, 30 million, and I think that might be high, but
Yeah.
he has earned more than 15 million annually before in his career. So I'm trying to think from a player's standpoint what I'd ask for. So maybe 2 and 30 for him. If you, heaven forbid, the poll ads would find some money under home plate somewhere and spend it on a free agent like Teoscar Hernandez, I think to get him away from the Dodgers, he'd be looking at minimum 3 years, possibly 4, and maybe 75 or 80. Almost 20 million per year. I think he'd be ideal. I saw a graphic the other day that showed all the free agent money that teams have paid since 2018, 2019, or something like that. And the Twins were pretty high on the list, like 7th or 8th. And, they don't appear to be in that kind of mood. But if they were, Teoscar Hernandez would be absolutely perfect for what they need in terms of what kind of player he is, how he fits into a clubhouse, the skills, the floor and ceiling, the personality. Grichuk wouldn't have all of that, but he'd also be a heck of a lot cheaper. So I give the Twins a choice. I'm that kind of guy.
Nice. Well, we appreciate you for that.
No, you don't. So we've got I'm interested in the Twins locking down first base, Goldschmidt or Santana, the outfield, Teoscar Hernandez or Randall Grichuk. But I also want to address the pitching staff. My starting pitcher is not – I've got 2 possibilities here. I've got Walker Buehler and I've got Matthew Boyd. Like a lot of other people, I fell in love with Matthew Boyd in the playoffs last year. I mean, Twins fans probably didn't because they're sick of the Guardians, and I don't blame them. But Boyd really came through last year. He signed a 1-year, $10 million deal coming off Tommy John. He'd been a pretty good pitcher with the Tigers, but he really, in a smaller sample size and in the playoffs, pitched as well as he had in his career, maybe a little better. And he was basically spotting his fastball. And, he's had a great slider before. It wasn't necessarily awesome pitch for him this time, but he had a couple different kinds of fastballs and just knew where to put them. And Boyd would be – I can't imagine the Guardians, though, the way they operate, not bringing him back. So I've got Buehler on here as well. Buehler, sort of like Goldschmidt, I think you'd do a 1-year deal, a decent amount, 15, 16 million with some incentives. But you have a chance. Look at what he did later in the playoffs last year for lots of upside and a big – you'd strike it rich maybe on a Walker Buehler deal. And I think either of those guys would enhance the first part of the Twins rotation.
Well, what I like about Boyd, and I mentioned either Jose Quintana or who was the other lefty I brought up? But either way, getting a lefty, not that I'm convinced it matters all that much. No, Nestor Cortez is who I had.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that it necessarily matters if you have a lefty in the rotation or not. And like you said, don't have a lefty just to have a lefty for the sake of it in the bullpen, and maybe the rotation's the same way.
We don't have to have a lefty in the rotation. I don't necessarily even like Boyd because he's a lefty, although I think with his stuff, his arm angle is – I think that's why guys like him are successful in the end. And I think you look around the league at left-handed pitchers, and you mentioned Jose Quintana and people like that. It's not Randy Johnson's stuff that they bring. They bring a little bit of a different look. They bring a different arm angle, a tricky kind of, scenario for hitters to go up against. So that's why they have success in the league.
Well,
so
I think that
he's a trickster.
He's a fit for that reason, and then Buehler is just kind of like. Would you say Buehler has like more value or less value than Luis Severino did a year ago at this time? It's probably more, right?
Yeah, I would say higher upside.
So I think, though, that he's probably going to try to take that path where a year to rebuild value rather than really try to lock in somewhere long-term and possibly underbid your future services. So we'll see what happens there. But I like both those choices. I think you are kind of exploiting a loophole by not naming 5 players, but instead naming multiple. But
would I do that?
Loophole, schmoophole, right?
I'm just giving the team some options here. I'm trying to keep it realistic. I've got a couple more here. There are these aren't either or guys. This is either Paul Goldschmidt or Santana, Teoscar Hernandez or Randall Grichuk, Matthew Boyd or Walker Buehler. AJ Minter is his own man. I'm doing this for Rocco because Rocco obviously needs a lefty in the bullpen.
Okay.
He can't handle not having one. And I think AJ Minter is a guy who is not that old and is not that used up and is coming off injuries that are lower body injuries. They're not arm injuries. It's knee issues and leg issues and kind of some ugly things. And I think you would have to pay him some money. You might get him. It might take a 3-year deal at this point because he's been in the league for a while. And this is his chance at free agency. He's got World Series experience. He's basically a 4-seamer cutter changeup guy. He doesn't throw a slider. I don't know if that is going to be an issue with the Twins not having a slider in your repertoire. But obviously he's got a cutter. The cutter sort of acts as the slider. It's the pitch with movement. Something to go against, right-handed batters. And so, maybe 3 years, $16 million, and that could be light. And that isn't even that much money now that you think about it. But and Minter is a guy who historically really, really good against lefties and not bad against righties. There isn't that big of a split. You could bring him into the bullpen if a team is lefty laden. This isn't necessarily like going to Funderburk or Okert or even Caleb Thielbar, pitchers who are vulnerable against right-handed batters. It always seemed to backfire. It seemed to backfire last year. This is a guy who's left-handed. You can feel a little better about the bullpen having this guy in high leverage situations against lefties, because if he does happen to face righties, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was going to pull up 602 OPS for his career against lefties and 666 for righties. So, I mean, he can more than handle himself regardless of situation. I didn't put much thought into relievers just because, they're so hard to figure out and there's so many interesting ones and they never seem to take the one you expect them to be interested in. But I think you've chosen wisely here, sir.
Well, I think Minter is a guy who not only are those things true about relief pitchers, you never know what you're going to get with a relief pitcher. I mean, that's not necessarily always true, but they do seem to be a very inconsistent group. And comparatively speaking, Minter is a guy, if you look up and down his career, who has given you something similar more or less every season that he's been in. He had like 2019 was kind of a bad year, but other than that, he's got ERAs 3.23, 706, 083, 378, 206, 376, 262, and fielding independent pitching over 4 twice, including last year. But he was limited to 34 innings last year with those lower body injuries.
A couple extra homers will crush you there.
Yeah. So he gave up as many homers as he did the year before, but in about half the innings. So that kind of killed him there. But still decent. He's only walked 123 in 348 career innings, and he's got more than a strikeout per inning. 27 home runs in 348 innings. That'll play. An ERA about 30% above league average when adjusted. He's not consistently a closer, but a guy he's got 36 career saves. He had 10 saves 2 years ago. So he's a guy who you can put in leverage situations and not necessarily worry about him, just like he can face right-handed batters and you don't have to worry about him. So AJ, I don't see the Twins necessarily. I don't know if they can find some money under home plate, but if they do, maybe they could spend it on AJ Minter in the bullpen and make Rocco happy, because it's a guy that you can trust out there and not have to worry. So
it reminds me of what everybody wanted Brad Hand to be, because I don't think Hand ever was perfectly good against righties, whereas Minter can handle them pretty well. But strikeout per inning. The homers have only really ever been an issue this year. In fact, never above 1 and then 1.6 this year. So some small sample noise there, if you ask me.
My last player is someone who is not a free agent until 2030. So you would either have to get him or wait for the team that has him to designate him for assignment. And that seems to happen a lot in the life of Gus Varland, brother of Louis Varland, Cy Varland, and the Twins. I would just think it would be absolutely hysterical to have two brothers in the same bullpen. The Rogers boys could have all been twins at the same time. That didn't happen, did it? They weren't twins at the same time.
No, they were Giants at the same time.
They were Giants at the same time, but not twins.
They probably said
it'd be funny for the Twins to have like twins too. That's asking a lot. I don't know who those players would be, but that would.
I think you nailed it with the Rogers brothers. That would have been it.
I guess that's obvious, isn't it? But if we had two Varlands in the bullpen, it would be great for the family who put so much time and effort into getting the boys to baseball practice from North St. Paul or wherever they're from every day, and all the rigmarole that families go through. To have two Varlands in the same bullpen would be pretty cool. And Gus is a guy who I don't think we're talking about a starting pitcher at this point.
Right.
He'd be a relief pitcher. He'd be a guy. He'd be like a 26th man at this point. But with the White Sox last year, again, small sample size, 20 innings, 23 hits, 4 walks, really good. Only 1 home run allowed, really good. 24 strikeouts, really good. Is something happening with the White Sox? Are they turning around Gus Varland? He's only got 46. He's only logged 46 major league innings, 26 of them last year. He's been with the Brewers. He's been with the Dodgers. Now he's with the White Sox. I don't think it would take much to get him. Just be aware of the waiver wire when it happens. And how cool would it be for? You think Louis would like that, or would he rather not have his brother in the bullpen? Because I would like to make this happen.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine he wouldn't like it. I think it'd be kind of cool, and he does strike me as one of those guys who just kind of takes off at 28 and has a nice little career as a middle reliever, Matt Guerrier style or something like that. So I'm game. They're going to cast a wide net every year to fill out a bullpen. Sometimes they have really nice internal candidates, and sometimes they're going to guys who are, minor league free agents or guys who are a year removed from arm surgery or something like that. I think you could get in on Gus Varland as he's ascending without, like you said, much investment whatsoever. He might be on that 40-man chopping block at this time of year with the White Sox anyway. And so, I'm on board with the Varland train. You could have Justin Verlander and Ben Verlander.
Yeah, it might be something that happens maybe not at the beginning of the offseason, but as people are shuffling in and out right before opening day. So hopefully the new Thad Levine will find, he'll know where to look on the waiver wire and see Gus Varland, and he'll jump on him when the time comes. Because I think that would be a fun acquisition. I a little bit tongue in cheek here with this acquisition, but I think it's something that, the White Sox tried last year to make a trade for Eric Fetty, and it didn't really work. Maybe they make a run at Gus Varland, go to Chris Getz and say, hey, these brothers, they need to be together. It's sort of like a Saving Private Ryan kind of thing. These brothers need to be together. We need to get Gus out of harm's way with the White Sox, get him on the Twins, get him back to his family. Can we make a deal this time, unlike Eric Fetty? And how can you say no to that?
It's an offer you can't refuse,
I guess. So that's going to do it for this episode of 5 Twins acquisitions. You pound the table for Dave's version. Pound the table. That's what that is. I'm Dave Brown. That's Brandon Warren. And we are going to see you tomorrow night and perhaps some other time.
Deal.
Spit me.
Whoops. Give him the shepherd's hook.